Okay, I call the meeting of BAWSCA to order. This is an in-person meeting which is being live streamed. When speaking, please make sure you speak directly into the microphone so the live stream can hear you. After this meeting, you may want to listen to the recording to see how we do. Please also tip your name card up if you want to speak, and I will recognize you. And also, contrary to the agenda, public comments will be limited to 2 minutes, although we'll talk about this a little bit later in my later comments. Also, the Bay Delta closed session, which I believe is closed session number 3, there's really no new information that, as is reflected on the email you received, so we're going to cancel that closed session tonight. So, Call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Andrews.
Present.
Bro.
Here for Brisbane and GVMID.
Thank you. Chair Chambers.
Present.
Cohen. Dorr. Duncan.
Present.
Hamilton. Oh, he's absent. Sorry. Hardy.
Present.
Hindi. Jordan. Lopez. Manalo. Matichek.
Here.
Mellinger. Mickelson. Montano. Piccolotti. Pierce.
Here.
Ragsdale.
Here.
Schneider.
Present.
Stevenson.
Here.
Stone. Villa. Weed. And Zichterman. And you have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, next, salute to the flag. So if you please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Okay, comments from the chair. Good evening and welcome everyone to BAWSCA's September 19th, 2024 meeting. Tonight we have 3 key items I want to address. The first is a key responsibility outlined in BAWSCA's enabling legislation, the appointment of a new general manager. I want to thank the ad hoc committee, Barbara Pierce, Leslie Ragsdale, Randy Bro, and Louis Vela for the hours, no, really days and weeks we spent on this task over the past several months. Nicole Sandkulla and Allison Schutte also played major roles in our search for the new CEO, who will provide a seamless transition that maintains BAWSCA's operational excellence and delivery results to the water customers that we represent. Second, by contract, we need to complete the annual review of our current CEO. I really appreciate the 17 directors who provided input during the allocated time, and we will be discussing this in our second closed session tonight. Finally, I want to resolve the issue of director compensation, and hopefully not just for 1 year. To avoid spending all night on this issue, I'm going to try to use a special debate rule. Essentially, everybody speaks once before anybody speaks twice, to encourage all to participate. The decision really needs to be made by everybody. There's one other new thing on this agenda, really on last month's agenda. Public comment is split between item 5 and item 20. Some directors and members of the public have requested more time beyond the current 2-minute limit per speaker that we have been offering. We do, however, have to get our business done using meeting venues that we do not own or control. Tonight we have negotiated an extended use of this room, but we still need to finish this meeting by 10:30. Accordingly, we will limit item 5 public comments to 2 minutes, but offer additional time, if available, at the end of meeting or item 20. We do hope to continue this practice in the future. To extend our meeting beyond 2 hours and 15 minutes, our rules of the board still require a vote by the directors. Finally, I want to thank the City of Burlingame who has allowed us to use this facility tonight. Now, let's get to work. Next item is PUC report, which I think is going to be opened up by Mr. Ritchie and will be followed up by Katie Miller. So, Steve, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Happy to be here, and I will kick this off with just a few slides on my report, then turn it over to Katie Miller, our Director of Water Capital Programs for the PUC, to talk about the status of the Water System Improvement Program. I've got one slide on water, basically, that says there's plenty of water this year. Any questions on that? Woo, yeah. No, there is, it was a decent year as far as runoff. You can tell from this slide that Hetch Hetchy is actually down to 300,000 acre feet now, frankly, because it was a fairly warm summer. And so, the water supply demands have actually been up quite a bit. But water bank is full, and the overall system storage is about 91%, which is above what would normally be this time of year, about 82%. What I really want to talk about is an event that happened last Friday in cooperation with the Turlock and Modesto irrigation districts and many other partners on main stem channel restoration on the Tuolumne River upstream of the old LaGrange Bridge. This is the title slide of a very long, detailed presentation about it. I think it captures a lot just in this slide, so I won't give the long, detailed presentation. But in essence, it's a project that was done jointly by the Fish and Wildlife Service, Turlock Irrigation District, Modesto Irrigation District in San Francisco, as part of an MOU we signed a few years ago that said we need to get started on restoration projects, and that's what we're doing here. It's also an early implementation project of the Healthy Rivers and Landscapes program, which is going through review by the State Water Board. We've got a variety of logos across the bottom. McBain Associates, the technical consultant, California Department of Fish and Wildlife, which contributed a substantial amount of grant funds to the project, and then the service, and then TID, MID, and San Francisco. And this is very gratifying, particularly for us, because just in the world that I've seen and over many years, I think Turlock and Modesto have come a long way in terms of really taking habitat restoration seriously. This is for some reason there was never a group photo there. This is a mob photo on the old LaGrange Bridge. I could point out different people. Actually, I'm tucked behind one of them there. But the guy in the middle of the photo in the cowboy hat is actually one of the Modesto Irrigation District board members. So they had board members there and senior staff, and really, I think it was a very clear joint event here. And this is a nice restoration project. It's about a mile, a little less than a mile of habitat restoration upstream, particularly with the placement of gravel. And the Tuolumne River has been starved of gravel, partly because of gold mining. And so a lot of the activity here is actually going down to where the mine tailings have been disposed of and recovering that gravel and now placing it in the river. So you see here on the lower right, a gravel bar, some riffles to the left and right. And I've been advised by people that this next thing with the video may actually work. We'll find out right now. Oh no, it didn't work. But basically, the water in the Tuolumne River is basically in a confined channel. It looks like a very flat channel, very slow-moving water. Here we've introduced riffles and bars and gravels for suitable spawning by anadromous fish. This is a big deal project for the partners, Modesto and Turlock and us, to actually finally begin some habitat restoration. I think that there are others who are participating. Tuolumne River Trust is participating. They're doing a similar project immediately downstream. I know Peter Dreckmeyer will not say that we're doing enough, but he at the same time will say it is a good thing to do. And see, there was a thumbs up. I'll take it. But no, I think this was really, really a special event, and we're very proud that it's taken place and we're moving forward. I'm now going to turn it over to Katie Miller to talk about the Water System Improvement Program.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Good evening, board members. I'm Katie Miller. I am the Director of Water Capital Programs for the San Francisco Public Utilities Committee, and I'm happy to be here tonight to share with you an update on the Water System Improvement Program. I hope all of you are familiar with the Water System Improvement Program. This is a major capital program that was undertaken by the SFPUC in around 2005. It's valued at $4.8 billion, of which $3.8 billion is dedicated to improvements in the regional water system. That was formally initiated in 2005, and we have just extended the completion date to 2032. That's 98% complete, with 48 out of the 52 projects are completed. There are only 2 active projects remaining. One project is in closeout, and then we've extended the program management project to accompany the 2 projects remaining. The Water System Improvement Program is designed around the SFPUC's level of service goals, and these are the 4 primary goals. There's also a cost effectiveness and sustainability, but these 4 goals, seismic reliability, delivery reliability, water quality, and water supply, really drove the purpose and the which projects were selected and the criteria for getting those projects done. So the good news is that all of the seismic delivery and delivery reliability projects have been completed, and also water quality. And what we have remaining are 2 water supply projects. These pie charts show that the program is 98% complete. We only have $66 million remaining of the $3.8 billion, and just those 2 projects. So now I'm going to share with you a little bit about the status of the 2 projects that are remaining, because these are the ones with the long tail on our program. The first one is the Alameda Creek Recapture Program project. This is a really important water supply project that's designed to capture water downstream of Calaveras Reservoir that has been released for environmental benefits. And then this water is returned to San Antonio Reservoir for later reuse. This is a $49 million project with $32 million spent to date. The project consists, as designed, with a floating pump station on Quarry Pond F2 in the Sunol Valley that captures Alameda Creek water when it runs subsurface into the quarries. This started construction in 2021, but the team had growing concerns about erosion that was on the Quarry Pond banks of Pond F2. This resulted in redesigning during construction to put in more flexible pipelines. However, there was concern about the operation and maintenance of these flexible pipelines and the high growing costs of change orders that were not only occurring but were likely to continue to occur. So the SFPUC made the very difficult decision to terminate the construction contract. We plan now to work on stabilizing the banks of the pond with our quarry partners and redesigning the facility to have more sustainable operation and maintenance. Then we will rebuild the contract in the next few years, and this is why we have extended the completion date to 2032, thus driving the end of the Water System Improvement Program to 2032. But we have better news on the Regional Groundwater Storage and Recovery Project. This also is a very important water supply project. This one had an approved budget of $158 million, and $131 million has been expended to date. This project is installing 13 regional groundwater wells and treatment facilities, and I think you're familiar with the shared aspects of this project. 9 of these wells will be operated by the SFPUC, 2 will be operated by Daly City, and 2 will be operated by Cal Water. 2 of our construction contracts have been completed with 12 wells and treatment facilities installed. A current follow-up contract is underway at this time and is installing cathodic protection and other improvements on some of those sites. And the final construction contract was awarded just this year, and we will start installation of the last well, which is the South San Francisco main well that will be turned over to Cal Water. And that one is anticipated to be completed in 2026. So that is my overview of the Water System Improvement Program. We will continue to partner with BAWSCA and communicate and perform reporting as required under our legal requirements. And we look forward to continuing to share with you on the progress. And both Steve and I are available to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? I guess you're safe. I do have one card for a public speaker. Dave Warner, did you want to speak on the SFPUC report? Sure. It'll be 2 minutes.
Very cool. Laura, does you like put a 30-second slide up or something for me to, so I just know when I'm about to run out of time. So I just had 3 quick comments. First comment is this Daly City project, my understanding is the cost per acre foot on this project will turn out to be very expensive. And as you know, I am very worried about our costs going forward, so I'd highlight that. The second thing was just 2 other data points for the SFPUC. One is the current capital project for Water Enterprise Group. This was in a report that came to commissioners one of the last few meetings. Out of their $3 billion of budgeted current capital projects, currently they're running 20% over budget at about $3.6 billion, which means that's $600 million above plan, which again will affect our rates going forward. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was, I think you guys are familiar with the San Diego County Water Authority, and they had a debt downgrade, and they said that would cost them on future financing probably in the range of $95 million, at least what they presented to the board. So the wastewater enterprise for the SFPUC has had one of its rating agencies do a debt downgrade, and so that's increasing. Well, that's wastewater, that's not us, but that can be risk for us, and if we do get a debt downgrade on the water enterprise side, that will affect our rates also. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, next item on the agenda is consent calendar. Anybody on the board want to remove anything from the consent calendar or have any comments on the consent calendar? If not, does the public have any comments on, or Ann, you have? Okay. Any public comment? Okay, go ahead, Ann.
I was just going to move to approve, but
Okay.
I'll wait.
Public have any comments on the consent calendar? Ann,
Move to approve.
is there a second?
Second.
Who said second?
Karen.
Karen, okay. Okay, any other comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, there was no BPC meeting in August, so we don't have a BPC report tonight. Next is item 5, public comment. And since Dave has already talked once, let's have Peter go first. Have two speaker cards.
Good evening, Peter Dreckmeyer, Tuolumne River Trust. I'm just here to read the much anticipated results of the SFPUC water quiz. I hope some of you got a chance to challenge yourselves. Which federal act allowed San Francisco to build the Hetch Hetchy water system? Raker Act in 1913. Hetch Hetchy Reservoir can hold what percentage of the SFPUC's total storage? 1/4. Hetch Hetchy, at total system storage, the SFPUC has enough water to last how many years? 6 years. In an average year, the SFPUC is entitled to enough water to last how many years? Correct answer, 3 years. How many years worth of water did the SFPUC have in storage at the height of the recent 3-year drought? The answer is 4 years worth. In water year 2022-23, which was a wet year, the SFPUC was entitled to enough water to last how many years? 12 years. Obviously, there was no place to store it. Which 2 water agencies own and operate Don Pedro Reservoir? I think most of you know Turlock and Modesto irrigation districts. How much does the SFPUC currently charge the BAWSCA agencies for an acre foot of water? Recently went up to $2,500 per acre foot. How much do the irrigation districts charge farmers for an acre foot of Tuolumne River water? $25, 100 times less. So I hope some of you got most of these right. If not, we'll just keep on studying up and we'll get to the point where everyone knows everything about the system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dave, go ahead.
Thank you. So CEO Sandkulla was very gracious, and she included in the digital copy of the correspondence log, my letter to a different group. But I wanted to give you a sort of more complete letter, and that is in the paper copy of the correspondence materials tonight. And the particular thing here is there's a chart, and I know you can't see this, but there's a chart that shows what the 2045 water rates will be under various supply and demand scenarios. And it's like if the supply is this and the demand's that, here's what your water rate turns out to be. And it's a very interesting report. The first thing I would say about it, okay, I wrote the report, so I get a compliment on myself, so forgive me. But the first thing I'd say is all the rates in the table are high, and that's difficult. And then the second thing is you want to build a supply that's greater than demand. We just can't assume we're going to be perfect, and those rates are really high. And so I guess what I'm mainly here trying to encourage you to say, we as part of BAWSCA really need to focus on the costs going forward, and there are many different ways of trying to address keeping these costs down, but they need to be addressed, and someone needs to take time on it. And I hope as future board action, you guys will consider doing this. And at a minimum, I would hope that you read this letter, and at the end of it are a number of suggested actions, and would very much encourage you to consider those actions. And lastly, I'd say it'd be an honor to discuss this further with any of you, just trying to help you understand the cost risks that I'm seeing. And if there's any chance that, Chair Chambers, you were willing to meet, I would love to go through this with you, and I'll work through CEO Sandkulla to see if that's possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Item 6 on the agenda is a closed session for consideration of appointment of new CEO. The board will convene tonight's first closed session regarding the appointment of our CEO. Before we convene, is there any public comment? Okay, hearing none, can we set this room up for closed session? Okay, we'll recess for 2 minutes while the room's being... Okay, we're coming out of closed session, or, Allison, do you want to provide a report?
The board consulted with the ad hoc CEO recruitment committee in closed session, which concluded at 7:30. And the board considered the recommended candidate and is ready to appoint the new CEO general manager. The resolution of appointment is available in the table right outside the door and on the back table with the cookies, if anybody would like to have a copy of the resolution.
Okay. I'm ready to move to agenda item 10. Okay, the Board of Directors desires to appoint Thomas Schmegel as BAWSCA's next CEO and General Manager beginning 1 December 2024. Legal counsel, can you please summarize the candidate's total compensation for the record?
Okay, microphone. Mr. Smegel's base salary will be $306,550. He will also be paid the maximum allowable portion of tax-deferred total compensation into a 401A savings plan. For 2024, this amount is $26,455, in accordance with PEPRA and IRS limits. Including the annual car allowance of $7,800, which remains unchanged since at least 2012. Mr. Smegel's total compensation will be $340,805.
Okay, I think you all have a copy of the motion, the resolution, excuse me. Do I have a motion to adopt Resolution 2024-02 to appoint Thomas Schmegel as the new CEO and General Manager of Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency, and authorizing the Chair of the Board to execute an employment agreement with Thomas Schmegel? Okay. Pierce?
Sir, it is my pleasure to make a motion to approve that resolution.
And who's it? Okay, Steve Jordan, okay. Is there a second?
No.
No.
Randy said that was Randy. That was Randy.
Randy
Randy was the first?
made the motion, yeah.
Okay. And Steve?
It would be my pleasure to second that motion.
Okay, Steve will second the motion. Any other questions from the board before we do? Okay, any public comment on this motion? Seeing none, say again? Mr. Schmegel, would you like to get up and say anything? Now that the public is in the room?
Yeah, I think maybe adopt the resolution first.
Okay.
Okay.
This is a roll call vote.
Oh.
It's a resolution.
Yeah, it's a resolution. Let's do that.
All right.
Andrews?
Aye.
Bro?
Yes for Brisbane and GVMID.
Chair Chambers?
Aye.
Cohen? Dorr? Duncan?
Yes.
Hamilton? Hardy?
Yes.
Hindy?
Yes.
Jordan? Lopez?
Yes.
Manalo? Matichek?
Yes.
Mellinger?
Yes.
Mickelson? Montano?
Yes.
Piccolotti?
Aye.
Pierce?
Yes.
Ragsdale?
Yes.
Schneider?
Yes.
Stevenson? Stone? Vice Chair Vella?
Yes.
Weed? Zichterman?
Yes.
And the motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Schmegel, would you like to address the board?
Sorry about that.
Thought I was going to have to campaign there for a second.
'Tis the
Right.
season.
Thank you all very much. I wanted to thank the board for selecting me, and especially to the ad hoc committee for recommending my appointment to the board. In the last 11 years, Nicole and the BAWSCA staff have aggressively pursued the interests of water customers that BAWSCA represents through advocacy, negotiation, programmatic efforts, and litigation when necessary to ensure a reliable supply of water at a fair price. And I'll get that right, Nicole, I know. For the 1.8 million residents, hundreds of communities, and thousands of businesses that thrive in our members' service territories. After more than 30 years working in the industry to support improvements in water service, water quality, and reliability, and as a former member of the BAWSCA board, I understand my new responsibilities and the challenges that lie ahead. I recognize that achieving BAWSCA's goal depends on leadership by its CEO, ideas, advice, and policy decisions by the board, and agreement with and among the 26 member agencies. I'm excited to dive into the opportunities to work with San Francisco and within BAWSCA's membership to improve long-term water supply reliability in the face of challenges such as climate change, housing mandates, and periodic drought. I've worked with Nicole on issues for more than a decade, and I know I have big shoes to fill. Nicole's advocacy on behalf of the water customers that BAWSCA represents has led to impressive results. I look forward to picking up where she leaves off and developing, with the board's guidance, a roadmap for BAWSCA in the upcoming decades to deliver results that will address the region's water supply reliability challenges. I will do my best to earn long-term support from the board and the member agencies to implement this strategy and achieve BAWSCA's goal of a reliable supply of high-quality water at a fair price. Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 11 is closed session number 2, which deals with public employee performance evaluation and community conference. And this is for our General Manager Nicole Sandkulla. Before we convene, is there any public comment on closed session number 2? Any public comment? Seeing none, need another 2 minutes?
Yeah, just give us a second.
Let's have a 2-minute recess while we change the closed session.
Thanks.
this on. Okay, Ms. Schutte, would you give a report from closed session?
Certainly. Are we live streaming again? Okay, great. Clo-
Sorry, I have a delay.
Okay. Closed session concluded at 8:15. The board evaluated the CEO's performance for the past year and determined that her overall performance is outstanding.
Okay, since no labor negotiations were necessary, we'll now proceed to agenda item 15. And I also will say that rules have changed. We need to vacate this room by 10, not 10:30. But I think we're progressing just fine.
We're good.
Yeah, we need to be done by then.
Yeah. Yeah,
We'll be here taking down for an hour, so the car will be open until 11, actually.
okay. Our CEO, Nicole Sandkulla, has had an outstanding year. The Board of Directors desire to modify the CEO's General Manager's Employment Agreement to provide a 3.2% total compensation increase. This is so her new annual base salary will be $34,166, including an annual car allowance of $7,800, which is unchanged. Her new total compensation will be $351,966. In addition, the board desires to revise its publicly available pay schedule to reflect the revised total compensation for the CEO, General Manager. Do I have a motion? Mr. Stevenson,
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution.
Second. Okay.
okay? Is there any public comment? Oh, I do need to say 15. Public comment from Maria Dorr. As a public agency, BAWSCA should use a fair, standardized method to determine total salary / benefits for the public servant serving as CEO. I continue to implore BAWSCA to remove subjective bonus practice and instead ensure the CEO's annual salary is fair and competitive with other public agencies, collaborative government aid bodies. As indicated prior, we are doing that. So, but that was her comment.
Exactly.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? And any public comment? No. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes abstentions? None. Passes unanimously. Okay. I think next is CEO comments, right?
No, we have an
Oh,
action
board
item.
compensation, I'm sorry.
Right.
16, we canceled 16.
This is my,
Okay, board compensation, Ms. Schutte, do you want to talk about this?
yes, this is my item, and we have some slides. Okay, so there was a detailed memo in the packet that explained the history on this item. It has been discussed at the BPC multiple times, and then a year ago at the board, and then in May. It was raised at the board, and we went back and did some work and created some options, but we did not have enough time at the July board meeting to discuss this. So I will, for those of you that are not on the BPC and are not as familiar with this, I'll run through the slides. There's about 4 slides, but they are absolutely duplicative of what's in the packet. So just as a reminder, the board member compensation is $100 per day of service, up to 4 days a month. This was set by the enabling legislation back in 2002. And there are rules around increasing board member compensation, which I have those rules on the slide. And so since our ordinance adopting compensation was adopted first in June 2004, we calculated the maximum allowable increase using a simple adjustment method, and that's $200 per day. So that's kind of the range. You're at 100, the max would be 200. Next slide, please. So at board members' requests, we created a comparison chart, and this has evolved over time because some more comments came in. But just to give you a sense of, this is not uniform across water or wastewater districts by any means. Next slide. As a reminder, BAWSCA also has a reimbursement policy. So you get compensation for attending board meetings, but you also can have reimbursement for actual and necessary expenses attending to your duties. And our reimbursement policy, which needs to go to the board and has been approved by the board, is fairly specific about outlining what qualifies for reimbursement and what doesn't. Obviously, BAWSCA board meetings do. If the chair asks you to go to certain meetings, those are reimbursable without any special request going to the chair. But, you know, additional meetings and things that are maybe not directly, clearly tied to BAWSCA would be subject to approval of the chair. And again, according to the law, if we do make changes to the reimbursement policy, we just have to do that at a board meeting. Next slide, please. Okay. At least one board member has requested that the board consider an increase in compensation, since there has not been an increase since 2004, and the request is to increase it to $200 a meeting. The BPC took this up on 3 occasions, but did not take action to create a recommendation for the board. The stipend increase, as it says in the slide, just straight financials, it would cost an additional $21,000 in annual meeting costs. And if it was in this current fiscal year, it's not budgeted for this current year, it would be funded by a transfer from the general reserve. And if it's delayed until next fiscal year, it would be included in that operating budget. But we have a very healthy general reserve, so we're just giving you the bones of how it would be done. There was also a suggestion that the board consider reviewing and modifying the reimbursement policy so that there will be a scheduled compensation review, so that a board member would not feel awkward raising this, but it would just be on a schedule like so many other reviews. Okay, recommendation slide. So we have multiple actions, and since the final determination would involve some drafting and something coming back to you, what staff and legal request is direction, and then in the November board meeting, we'll have the final, if it's a change in the reimbursement policy, if it's a change in the ordinance, whatever the changes, we'll have it in black and white. It could be on the consent calendar if you have very clear direction. But we have these kind of 3 options, and you could pick and choose more than one. And one is to simply increase the stipend up to $200 a meeting, and we could do that effective in the next board meeting cycle once we adopt the change in the ordinance. And this, again, would just require transfer from the general reserve, since we do zero-based budgeting here at BAWSCA. Another option would be to request this change to go into effect in the next fiscal year, and it would be built into the plan. And then a third option that could be coupled with one of the first 2 is requiring a specific year interval for reviewing board member compensation. We don't have a specific year. A range of 3, 4, or 5 was suggested at one time, but we welcome board input on where that should go. And then, of course, you could take no action as well. So that's my report.
Okay. What I would like to do on debate on this, because when we tried it last year, it just went back and forth, and, you know, we just spent a lot of time on it. What I'd like to do is, before anybody speaks twice, everybody can speak once. And if those aren't If you haven't spoken, I'll call your name and say, do you have anything to say? If you don't have anything to say no comment. If you want to give one of your preferences, that would be appreciated. And then after everybody's spoken once, then if somebody wants to make a motion, we could make a motion, and then, but they should probably keep track so they know if there's support for their motion or not. That's what my hope is. So we will start by calling on people, but but everybody else is gonna be able to speak before you speak a second time. So, Director Mellinger.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I am going to start by saying, thanking staff for this presentation and saying that I am uncomfortable with the idea of changing compensation mid-fiscal year and conducting a general fund transfer to do so. I think that the best way to do this is to schedule a 5-year annual review or 5-year review cycle for board compensation to begin next year, probably Q1, and to report back with recommendations for the budget prior to the adoption of the budget next year. So my preference would be alternative 3. Thank you.
Okay, Director Hardy.
We had a lot of discussion at BPC and could not really come to a consensus because so many of us were uncomfortable with the idea of giving ourselves a raise, especially, and I will say a couple of us come the furthest, come from the South Bay, and even if you didn't pay me, you couldn't get rid of me anyway. So I would come in. And that was kind of the consensus. I've always said, my time is so valuable, that's why I give it away. And it's important that directors be compensated for actual costs. And when we did find out that there was that compensation, we all, most of us felt much better about leaving it alone. And I would say, I too come down on number 3 with a 5-year. And that's what I would feel comfortable with. Thank you.
Okay, and Director Snyder.
At the policy committee meeting, I know we went through this quite a while, and I don't want to put Director Vela on the spot, but he talked about the amount of staff time it takes to get reimbursed. Now, I come so very, very far away to this meeting, so compensation for mileage doesn't really make any sense. But as a council member in a city that had not updated its council salary since 1999 and is the lowest paid, $345 a month for the probably 30 hours I put in every year because I love being a council member. And then the state changed the law that would allow cities to update their salaries based on population size. And then they said, but you can't do it until there's a general election, and you can't do it until it's another year and a half. It couldn't happen until 2025, and this was legislation in 2023. It's kind of, and then I'm going to give you one more story. When I was sworn in as mayor in 2022, my mom had just been released after 7 weeks in the hospital, and I had to get someone to stay at home with her. And it cost me $400 to get sworn in as mayor on that. So we all think, hey, we're making a decent salary. I'm close to retirement, so my worldview is changing. And right now, $100 or $200 can mean something significant. So whereas I was not originally in favor of, $100 is nice. I've never been paid for being on a board before. It's pretty cool. But I do think that just like we need to pay our CEOs and our staff, we need to pay our board members. So I support $200. And, I see the rationale in not going until 25, 26, but I'm for number 1. And let's just get it done. And all of us deserve. We don't know how many people are not here because they can't afford to be here. And I hope somebody else will talk about the complication of getting reimbursement on things. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody want to volunteer before I start calling? Okay. Montano? Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right. What do we have?
Montano? Carmen?
Montano, and then go ahead.
And then Lopez.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Chair. So this was brought up at the last meeting,
by Mr. Weed. And I for one am for number one, because time is valuable. And I'll give you an example. I've been serving on this board for about 3 years, and I'm okay with the $100, but cost of living has increased, inflation, and so it would be nice, as I agree with Ms. Schneider, to have that extra compensation for our time and effort. Thank you.
Okay, Director Lopez.
Yeah. None of us are martyrs, right? Like, we're not doing this and we don't have bills to pay and place to go. And I always find it awkward or weird that council members and politicians have this weird bait and switch where they're very comfortable advocating for other members, their residents, their population, and then not for themselves, as if they themselves weren't residents and recipients and benefiting from the policies that they're doing. And so, you know, number one, I think it's important to remember that we are also a part of this very agency, the 1.8 million people. We're also benefiting from it. We're advocating for it. We're making policy. And so I think number three also belies an assumption that we're somehow here to give ourselves raise, and I think $100 isn't enough of an incentive to say we're in it for the money. I think it's fair to say that unanimously. I don't think you can go on a date anymore with $100 these days, or for yourself. So, you know, and more importantly, just from an equity standpoint, we look at all our cities, all our towns, and you look at the demographics, and I don't mean even from an ethnic standpoint, but who has the ability, the bandwidth to serve the public, and who has the time. And to the extent that this can encourage future folks to join the ranks of this organization, I think it's important that we also send a message, not just from the staff standpoint, but from a director's policy, from the policymaker standpoint, that we understand that we just talked about cost of living adjustment, right? We haven't had a raise in about 20 years. You think about how money's changed since then. So I understand from a philosophical point of view the issue of giving yourself a raise, ourselves a raise, but I think given it's been 2 decades and the amount of cost of living expenses that has changed dramatically, I think it's a moot point, frankly. And I also think we should set a message that we're here to adapt with the increasing unaffordability. And if we're gonna incentivize people to do this work with all their effort, with all their time, we have to at least symbolically say, we understand your time is valuable, and we're trying to adapt with the rising cost of doing this work in a noble way and in an effective way.
Thank you. Director Zichterman.
So number one.
Thank you, Chair. Hearing what everybody's saying, and it's kind of getting to my own personal opinion too, but just to summarize what I think we're concluding, there's a lot of favor for 1, 2, and 3. And 3 would be stipulated with, I would think, a 5-year periodic review. Conveniently, 2025 is when it would start, and we would do it on the 5 and 0 from then on, before the budget for that following fiscal year. So this adjustment could be done as part of the budgeting and not be something that we have to take out of general funds. So I would think a motion with those first 3 points with that 5-year stipulation clarification on number 3 would be the way to go.
Okay. Any other, okay, Ms. Andrews. Angela?
This topic is always painful, and we've dealt with this in our city, and one of the things that we don't really discuss is sometimes it costs money to serve, and that weeds out a lot of people, unfortunately. For this board, I do feel like $200 a month is reasonable, or per meeting. And I know that there's other agencies where it's $200 per meeting, and I saw that it can be up to 10 meetings a month. And I think it's pretty reasonable to cap it at 4 to keep the cost down on the budget. So I'm for number 1 and for number 2 and for number 3 if we are to look at it in 5-year intervals and starting at 2025. Thanks.
Okay. Director Stevenson.
Yeah, similar to Director Schneider's comments, City Council has been dealing with this, not just locally, but across most municipalities. And like BAWSCA, didn't address any compensation for city council member increases for more than almost 20 years. So I have no issue with one. I think that's fair. Nobody's, I mean, when you think about the number of hours you spend in a meeting, nobody's, making ends meet from that. I think in terms of two, I'm really indifferent. I don't see it's a big deal either way. And number three, up maybe instead of a 5-year cycle, because I think it's relatively arbitrary. We don't know what inflation's going to do year over year and that type of thing, is maybe tie it to a COLA up to the max of the ordinance. So once it hits the max, it has to be re-adjudicated to, consider something. So that's similar to what we're trying to do at the council, so.
Okay. Any other? Okay, Director Madchek, who's first? Madchek.
Thank you. I think we all come to this board with different circumstances and how we got here. And for me, the council appointed me, and we're all appointed to lots of boards. And this is the only one that has any sort of compensation. And for me, it seems kind of odd, frankly. So I actually don't expect to be compensated for the amount of time I spend preparing and attending these meetings. And so I actually am in favor of number 4, because as others, at least one other person said, I would be here whether there was a stipend or not. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Director Jordan or Weed? Guys can fight about it. Whoever gets the mic.
We'll wrestle for it. But I have to have my cane to do that. Well, I have weighed in on this a couple of times, and I guess I would be in favor of 1 and 3. I don't really care what the interval is, whatever we deem is appropriate, but I do think it's after 20 years, since it's already been established that there's a de minimis compensation. Some of us, it takes an hour and a half to get here. So I would be in favor of doing it as soon as is practical. If November works, that's great. If it's January, that's, I don't really care either one, but I do think it is, the board deserves to be appreciated, even though it's not the reason we're here, but I don't think we should be ashamed to vote for this either. And I think one reason that it's taken way more time than it should have at the BPC in particular is because the analytics weren't done properly. Bad data was prepared. Large agencies have larger compensations. Large agencies have benefits. So, and nobody's asking for that, but all that's been omitted, and if it were done right and properly the first time, we wouldn't have spent so darn much time on it, I would think. Thanks.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Lisa?
I was here when we established the $100. It was a modest number then, and 20 years later, comes to 3.5% increase using the rule of 70 per year. $200 is a modest number now. I commented at the policy committee, this is not a charity. And in fact, it's one of the largest districts in the Bay Area when you take into account the number of people that we impact on our water. This is the equivalent of a major agency and our ultimate responsibilities. I have found it remarkable, including our board, how much angst was involved in individuals talking about changing their own compensation. is reminiscent of student government at junior high and high school level. It's all right to vote for yourselves. It's all right to pay yourselves. On the total amount of the budget, it's a nominal amount of money. We paid $180,000 a year for a strategic consultant who's since passed. But maybe the board should be functioning more in strategic consultants and use those dollars that we have in our budget to cover the additional cost for the board operations, and it's in our budget. I would go with one, and based on the extraordinary amount of time we spent talking about an incredibly modest amount of money in total, number 3 may make some sense because at least it puts it on a schedule. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Duncan.
Thank you. I said this at the board policy committee that I'm in a unique spot because I represent Cal Water, or I'm an employee of a company, and what happens is BAWSCA pays my company, and I believe, I'm 99% sure we apply that to our purchased water, so it offsets slightly our San Francisco costs. I don't get paid by BAWSCA, but I'm an employee, so I'm really neutral on this. And after hearing everybody, I understand it, and you know, $100 20 years ago is not $100 today, and I think if you calculate it in the inflation calculator, it's like $166 or $170. So I get it, and if we can increase participation and get other people, if that puts people over the edge to want to participate, I get it. I think we want more people here. We want more people to consider it. So I would support number 1. I think it makes sense to do number 3, and I'm kind of indifferent on number 2. So I do think it makes sense to really encourage people to participate.
Okay. Well, if there's no volunteers, I will start calling on people. Director Bro. Oh, okay. Manalo? Director Manalo?
Is it, okay. Well, I have a volunteer. I make a motion to.
We're not doing motions yet.
Oh, we're not? Okay, well, let me let you
I'm just
know my
trying
thoughts.
to get your opinion.
My opinion is, upon hearing my colleagues here, I think my opinion is on number 1 and number 3. I mean, hearing that some people were here during the inception, and when the board, the $100 was 20 years ago, I think that a lot of folks have talked about where we're at now, and so I look at number 1 and number 3.
Okay. Any other signs up? No. Okay, Director Bro. Say again? Oh.
You
I'm
go do
sorry.
Sam first. He's got his card up. That's great. Director Hindy's fine.
Thank you, Chair.
Director Hindi, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'm very comfortable talking about this because this is my last year on BAWSCA, so it will not be impacting you guys. But also, you know, I mean, none of us come in here for the 100 or for the 200. But the fact of the matter is there are some people that will make a difference for them. It will help them. And I think somebody mentioned that it's really a drop in the budget. Maybe Director Reed mentioned that. It's similar to what we talked about, how we send signals and messages to our employees and to the people we work with. It's no different for the directors. It's not really going to be paying the bills. No one's doing $100 or $200. I'm sure all in our private line of work, we make the $100 in less than an hour or something to that effect. But it is important, I think, to have a level of stipend that will change with time. To that end, I'm in support of number 1. And with number 3, I have to concur with Director Stevenson to tie it to COLA. So you don't have this discussion every few years and get into it. It becomes an automatic. And really, no one has, for those of us who feel awkward talking about this, you don't have to do so. But also, you're being fair and you're being, to Director Lopez, have some sense of equity, even though the 200 is not really the equity point. Thank you.
Say again? Okay. Allison?
Yeah, I just have a clarification on the amount of increase every year. The statute allows for up to 5%. So COLA is permitted, or 5%, or something else, but yeah, it just can't be more than 5%. And so that's how we came up with 200, doing simple increases over the decades.
Yeah, and thank you for that clarification. I mean, even also, maybe there's a cap, as the director Stevens had mentioned, whatever that amount might be, to a certain level, okay, we get to 300, 400, whatever that the board is comfortable with. You could put a cap as well with the 5 annual max.
Okay. Now, I think Director Bro. We only have one.
Thank God.
1 equals 2.
Well, thank God, yes. So I think my comments will mostly be for those who are trying to keep tally of votes. I'm an employee of the 2 public agencies that I'm also appointed to represent by a city council and a board of directors, so I find myself in a unique position. And I want to be very clear that I'm making my judgment only on Randy's unique position. I'm not judging anyone else. But because of that, I would feel morally compelled to abstain from voting on any recommendation to increase our compensation.
Okay. Director Mickelson.
You got me.
Yep.
So we, at my board, we have wrestled with this also. Yeah, I've stood for election 6 times. 3 of them have been uncontested. Most recent cycle, 3 of my board mates went back on board uncontested. So we have thought maybe it is a money thing. Maybe us old guys, when we fall over at our board table, need to think about our replacements and how we can attract the next generation to public service. And they may have costs that we don't have. They may have childcare costs. I'm the cook in my family. If I'm not home, maybe they have to go out to dinner, or maybe have to have Chinese brought in. That comes at a cost. So there are costs associated with sitting at this board. So it's not so much for me, it's not so much for my other board mates in Half Moon Bay, but it's about the next generation. Because at some point, we're going to be termed out, or we're going to move on and actually really, really retire. We keep threatening it. So it's for those that follow. I would be in support of number 1, and I do see a consensus here for number 1, and I think it may have gone over the top. So I'm for number 1. Thank you.
Okay. Director Piccolotti. No comment?
I like to think in terms of future boards, so I think 1 or 3 is fine.
Okay.
I think every other month, my wife gets a pedicure, and now she'll get a pedicure and a manicure or something. So.
You can do both feet.
But in all seriousness, I think it's important to think of future boards. So.
Okay. Director Pierce.
Well, I am certainly willing then to do the 200. I would like to have a review, and I'd like to have it on a year basis. I'm concerned about having something that you put in place that just sort of automatically, I think it's good for people to think about it. Hopefully we won't have to agonize. I probably won't be here, but agonize about it. But I think it's good to have a decision. So if it was on like a 4-year cycle, that could come to the board and they could look at it and say, oh, you know what, it really should be up again. I would support that. And so I could do the 200, but I would like it to be reviewed, and I wouldn't like it to be automatic.
Okay. Director Ragsdale. Oh, no, Ragsdale.
All right, as you can see by my not saying anything, I'm very conflicted. So this is the only thing I'm paid for, but I live in Hillsborough, and we're not paid at all. And I actually did bring it up when we talked about goals. Hey, could we consider, because everyone else is getting a raise, like at least enough for dry cleaning? So I'm definitely not opposed to payment for service. But that, you know, $92.25 or whatever every month is such a great surprise, that it's, you know, I feel like, wow, I'm gonna give myself a raise on the one thing I've paid for, but I really appreciate everyone's comments, especially for future boards. So I'm taking that to heart. I do like the idea. I know it's, you know, only 21,000, but, you know, we're very careful here on this board at looking at expenses, and so I would prefer that the money come out of the budgetary process, and that it be accounted for and not just transfer over from the general funds. I feel that we should scrutinize this as much as we scrutinize all the other expenses. I didn't like the COLA idea only because I like the idea of not having to awkwardly bring it up, but I'm also fine with the, this is gonna be hard to tally me, sorry. I'm fine with the every 5 years, every whatever, but either way, I like the idea of us, someone not having to raise their hand and say, hey, I think we need a raise. So something where it's automatic. I'm fine with anything that everyone else can agree on.
Okay. Director Vella?
I don't even remember when I went on a date last. It's been a long time. But I do know that when I take my children and grandchildren to dinner, it costs me a lot of money. So obviously, this is not about money. This is ridiculous that we're having this conversation. And I hope we will never have a conversation like this again. So number 3 definitely has to go in. I would, without going into a lot of words, I don't even want to see the people kind of adjusting themselves on their seat because everybody is so uncomfortable talking about this. So hopefully we won't have this. I'll go for 1 and 3, and we'll get it over and done with. That's it. Thank you.
Given that my city council just did this last week, the way it was phrased is it'll be up to the maximum that the state will allow us, which is $900 or something like that. They build in a COLA, but the COLA would get reviewed every year, the same way we look at our garbage contracts. So in the future, you have that flexibility. You can say, hey, inflation didn't go up this year, or we have a year like the last 2 years. So it's a flexibility in whoever's going to make the motion. But I thank you for everyone's comments. Yeah, I can send you Millbrae's, but I'm sure staff knows how to look at it. I don't know what Burlingame has done. So far of the cities in San Mateo County, only one city in the middle of a very contested election has not increased their salaries.
My concern with doing something like inflation is that's really, you're gonna get some really crazy numbers. It's really gonna be hard. I would rather just do the 5% a year, but consider it every 5 years. And it's 5 years to say, well, that's 25%, but inflation's been lower, so maybe you'll only do 10% or something like that. But, you know, I think the bookkeeping, trying to figure out, well, this year we get, you know, $132.50, and the next year we get $146.25. I think that's a little crazy. So, you know, I'm okay. You know, I know 5%'s the max, but, you know, let's consider every 5 years or something like that. And that's that.
I just have a point of clarification, since this is the ordinance for compensating the board. Even if we had a COLA or 5% as a metric, we still need to have a public hearing every time we touch the ordinance, which is not very time consuming, but we could not put it on consent.
Okay.
So if it comes back every year, it's an agenda item every year, the same time every year. It's just doesn't.
Or every 5 years.
Or every 5 years, but it just, we have to have a public hearing when we touch that ordinance, to be extremely transparent.
Okay? Everybody's, okay, Director Stevenson?
this is my second time. Do I get to do this?
Yeah, second time.
Now you do.
We're in second round now.
I'd like to hear from staff how difficult it would be to manage an annual COLA increase to the median compensation level. Is it really difficult, or is it just putting in a number in the computer and it?
Staff and CEO.
So I can provide some thoughts on that. So you will recall, as part of the budget process, one of the things we do is we have a COLA. We have the same COLA we use every year. It's the December clerical workers, Bay Area clerical workers, da, 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 da. And so we are quite comfortable applying that COLA and reflecting it in the proposed budget, right? And then you act on the proposed budget reflecting that number. You know, so if you do it as part of that process, I think that would be fairly straightforward, right? And that could then, it would probably, given legal counsel's thought, it would also probably require a resolution at that point. Allison, is that correct?
It's an ordinance, so you would need to put.
Or an ordinance. Oh, so then we
A
have to-
public hearing, you need to put it in a newspaper of general circulation. There's a bit more process with this type of compensation ordinance.
So every time they adjust it, even though it's in accordance, is there, even if it's in accordance with the process identified in the ordinance, so if the ordinance says we're going to adjust it by up to 5% every year,
So-
does they have to do it every year?
I will research that.
Okay. Because that was kind of my thought, was if you reflect it in the budget, so it becomes part of the budgetary process, it's the COLA that's the same COLA that it's applied to the staff, so it's consistent across the agency. Then, and then,
We might be able to do that if the ordinance is extremely specific about the escalator.
Yeah.
Because then we notice it once,
and then
it's clear.
you move from there.
Yeah.
And then, and so from that perspective, that would be fairly straightforward.
Ordinance, say every 5 years. Like, let's, you
Oh,
know.
can
like
you
we
turn your
want-
microphone on, Director Stevenson?
Oh, it is. If we did it every 5 years, in terms of touching the ordinance, as long as that holds true, that any provision within the ordinance is just applied, then we wouldn't be doing it or voting on it every year.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, any other?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to attempt to summarize what I think we've heard. There is pretty unanimous support for the idea of this going to $200 a meeting. I think that has been very well articulated. I have no discomfort with that, and you look at the length of these meetings, which is typically about 3 hours. At $100 an hour, that's $33 an hour, which is double minimum wage, less than double minimum wage in Sunnyvale. So that's not a prince's ransom. And considering that this is essentially on a par with consulting work, I think $200 per diem makes a lot of sense and is entirely appropriate. The question seems to be, do it now or do it next year? And I'm going to say that yes, the $21,000 is not a substantial amount. But on principle, I believe that this should be done as part of the budgetary process. I come from a city with a very strong culture, a very strong fiscal culture. And in general, I don't like doing things outside of the budgetary process unless there is an emergency or some immediate need. And I don't believe that is the case here. I think that the best way to do this, and as I said, I don't have any discomfort with the idea of paying us for our time. But there is a right way to do this, and the right way to do this is through the budgetary process. And so I am going to rise with a motion for alternatives 1, 2, and 3 to increase the salary of the per diem to $200, to do that as part of next year's budget, and to establish a 5-year review cycle, which I guess since we're saying $200 now, the 5-year cycle would start in 2030.
Then you don't want 1, you only want 2 and 3. Because 1 is this effective
Oh, 2 and 3 then. So just set it to $200 starting next year. Thank you.
I'll second it.
I'd like to make a substitute motion. I'd like to substitute motion for 1 and 3. And we'll hopefully get a second.
I'll
I would-
second that.
Oh, no.
Second.
Microphone.
Now we need to vote on the substitute motion, actually have discussion on the substitute motion, and then vote on it. My issue with the substitute motion is we're not sure that the amount of work required for a periodic review. Are we gonna, can we put the rules in the ordinance? Or do we need to redo the ordinance every year? And we're gonna wait at least another month so we can get the proper ordinance together. And I think time's getting close enough that I'm leaning towards the original motion. Director Snyder.
I support the substitute motion, but it's still going to come back to us in November, correct? So there's time to do the slides that will clarify what we're going to be finally voting on in November. Or am I misunderstanding?
You are correct. It will need to come back in November, but I still think staff needs a little bit more direction on 3. If the substitute motion is for 1, which is a $200 increase as soon as practicable, which we will, work on. But on 3, it's a 5-year review, but is there any action in the interim period?
Oh, since it was my substitute motion, I would suggest it's fairly straightforward. In 5 years, you review it to determine, you put it on the schedule on our agenda. We then have a blank slate to decide. We can go up to a maximum of 25%, which over the 5 years comes down probably less than 4% if you were to do the actual annual increases. But I don't understand why more direction is needed other than agendizing a change in compensation once every 5 years.
I think
Yes.
your request is it 5 years?
Yes, that's clear to me.
That's clear now.
And I could bring that back in November to be voted on. That's very clear.
Okay, I'm still a second on that.
I just have a point of clarification, which I think applies to both motions. So, so if we do the 5-year, so it would be 200, and then every 5 years we decide if it's gonna be more than 200. So the COLA idea, the periodic COLA is not happening in either motion. Is that correct?
It would be discussed in 5 years.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yes, I will be opposing the substitute motion. As I said, there is a right way and a wrong way to do budgeting and to spend money, and if you can spend it as part of a normal budgetary process, you should. This gets, as I said, it's not the amount that bothers me, it's the process. Thank you.
Oh, I would support the substitute motion. My thinking is, first, the agency has had over a year to put this in the budget, should it have wanted to. So it's not like we're springing something that's surprising the agency. And I think we need to listen to what Allison is saying. Council is going to go figure out, particularly on item 3, what makes sense. We're not going to be going in and trying to compute, was it 3 or 3.2% on a $100 base? I mean, so they're going to come back, I'm trusting, with something that is easy to implement and not burdensome on computations for small sums of money. So I don't see that it's out of the ordinary, in terms of budget, given the immense sums of money we spend on many other things, worthy things, I'm sure, in the agency, but this is not one of the immense things. Thanks.
Any other board members? If none, we need to vote on the substitute motion.
Point of order, for a substitute motion, you have to vote on whether you're going to accept the substitute motion over the first one. There has to be 2 votes.
Yes. The first vote is, do we accept the substitute motion? All those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Right? Okay, all those opposed?
Oh my gosh.
Got it?
Point of order, I request a roll call vote.
Okay. Let's do a roll call vote. This is in favor of the substitute motion. Aye is in favor, no is against.
Okay. Andrews.
Aye.
Bro.
Aye for Brisbane and GVMID.
Chambers.
No.
Cohen. Dorr. Duncan.
No.
No. Okay. Hamilton. Hardy.
No.
Hold on. It's a lot. I have a lot of rows here. So you guys are. Okay. Hamilton. Hardy. Hindi.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
Lopez.
It's been an exciting evening, yes.
Okay. Manalo. Matichek.
No.
Mellinger.
No.
Mickelson. Montano. Piccolotti. Pierce. No. Ragsdale.
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Stevenson.
Yes.
Stone. Vella.
Yes.
Weed. Zichterman.
No.
Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 yeses.
So yes has it.
So that's yes. Okay.
We should take a vote if we're going to do aye or
Okay,
yeses.
so yes.
Okay, so the substitute motion has replaced the original motion.
Okay.
Now, any need for discussion on the original, on the substitute motion? You have your card up. You have your card up. Do you want to speak? Yes. Go ahead.
I would just say that most of us are used to doing mid-year budget augmentations. That's typically happening in September. This is the normal time for mid-year budget augmentation. Thank you.
Just to clarify, BAWSCA does do a mid-year budget review. We will be doing that. It will come to the BPC in December and to the board in January. And I am already anticipating adjustments anyway, given the CEO changes. Thank you.
Okay, any, Stevenson?
So if I just recap, the motion is start now or as soon as feasible. It's $200 to start. It's 5 years on some interval to revisit the ordinance. Does it or does it not include COLA?
We would determine that in 5 years.
My only comment there is we'd be back in the same boat.
We may, but I would hopefully, that issue will come up in the normal course of the review on a 5-year cycle.
And we would likely have to rewrite the ordinance unless the attorney can put something together that doesn't need a
Right,
review.
but
I
our
think it's,
city council does not require if we tie it to a COLA until the ordinance gets changed. So that's why I keep harping on the COLA, because the issue is we then fall back and we're like, well, it's really not fair anymore, and it's meaningful to some. We're trying to have a process that just takes it off the agenda for at least the 5-year period,
Well, it is off the agenda for a 5-year period.
but it's fixed.
And then on the 5th year, we sit down and look at what the issues are. But that's 5 years out. It's a long time in this game.
Agreed.
Director Bro.
Thank you, and maybe just a clarification question to council. If I understand correctly, by statute, we can't increase by more than 5% a year. And my perspective would be that in 5 years, when we review it again, we would most likely look at metrics such as a CPI for the Bay Area, and that would help inform the board's decision at that point in time as to whether they would want to recommend the 5% increase for each of the preceding years.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Director Snyder.
I'm a tiny bit confused because I think Director Stevenson thought that it was going to include at least the language to allow for a COLA or a CIP increase that would be discussed probably during the budget setting time of each year. It would just be a normal part of budget setting. Did I misunderstand how you?
understand me correctly.
Okay, and who was the second? Was I the second? So, Member or Director Hindi, did you understand it the same way?
That was my understanding.
But the motion that is on the floor does not
Okay.
include that. The
So-
motion on the floor is a 5-year review and a $200 compensation as soon as practicable, and it would stay at $200 until the 5-year review time period. That is the motion on the floor right now.
So then I'm gonna withdraw.
Through the chair, hold on. I appreciate that. I'm trying to figure out how we can split the baby here and get something done tonight. And one way to do that is to approve this motion right now and require, and it might be a separate motion, that under the annual budget setting process, that an evaluation based on COLA or CIP is considered for staff and board members. That's one way to split that. It's then in the normal budgetary process. I would have said it's easier the way a lot of our city councils are doing is simply having the language in the ordinance, and it gives the board at that time, depending on how inflation has been, or bad budget times, or the impact on our populations because of 12 other things all going up, it gives you that flexibility in having it. But Director Stevenson, I think we lost that opportunity. So I'm trying to figure out how we can still move forward. And I hope you and Director Hindi, I want to support you. What do you think?
If you let him speak?
So,
All
question
right,
to council
actually,
then.
Mr. Hindi has his sign up.
Yeah, thank you. So, question to council, is that possible to kind of, we go through this motion and then add what Director Schneider suggested, another motion?
I mean, you just went through a process to confirm the substitute motion. This is a further substitution, and it's a different method for
different
number
method.
3,
I see.
so.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna keep my second.
Okay, the motion on the floor does not have a change every year. The motion on the floor is for $200 as soon as possible, and in 5 years, we do a review, making up for everything.
Right, and the review in 5 years can include COLAs or anything you wish. It can be scheduled as part of the budget process, but that's 5 years out.
Yes. Okay, that's the motion on the floor. Okay. Director Lopez.
I just have a quick comment. As cumbersome as it may be, I do appreciate that we've truncated the deliberation from 20 years to 5 years, so it makes us 4 times more efficient, which I appreciate. It's a little cumbersome, but it's a progress. That's all.
Hey, but this is 2 years in a row, so I mean, it's 5 years instead of 1. Okay, any other comments? The vote, okay, Director Mellinger.
I just want to say I will be supporting the substitute motion. I think the raise is very much in order, and while I disagree with the timing and the process, I think on the merits it is correct. Thank you.
Okay. Who was the second on the substitute motion? That's just Director Hindi. Okay, Attorney.
Before you vote, please call for a public comment.
Certainly. we vote, is there a comment from the public? Seeing none, hearing none. You want a roll call, or do we want? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote.
All right, Andrews?
Even though I'm still confused on just a little bit.
So,
Just-
should we repeat the motion?
Can you repeat the motion? Because I understand that, I just want to let people know you're kind of giving up the COLA, just so you know. And I'm okay
Okay.
with that, but just want to make sure people understand that, because I
Well,
don't think
we're
it's
giving up,
100.
we're giving up an annual COLA.
An annual COLA.
What we're
I just
doing,
wanna make sure people
what
know
we're
that.
doing is $200
Mm-hmm.
as soon as possible. And we will review in 5 years what the inflation has been, or whatever we want to consider. It's happened over the previous 5 years to set the new limit, although the only requirement is that it can't be more than 5% a year, because that's in the statute.
Right, okay. I'm
Okay.
okay with that, aye.
Aye. Okay. Andrews, aye. Bro?
Please show Brisbane and GVMAD votes as abstention.
I will. Thank you. Chambers?
Aye.
Cohen, Dorr, Duncan,
Yes.
Hamilton, Hardy.
No.
Okay. I'm gonna mark you as a no. You guys are getting me a complex sheet here today. Sam, Hindi, sorry.
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Lopez,
Yes.
Manalo. Matichek,
No.
Mellinger,
Yes.
Mickelson. Montano. Piccolotti. Pierce. Ragsdale.
Yes, and thank you all for this very considered discussion.
Schneider.
Yes.
Stevenson.
Yes.
Stone. Vella.
Yes.
Weed.
Aye.
Zichterman.
Yes.
We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. The motion passes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Next item is CEO reports. And I assume that we'll ask for public comment at the end of all your reports?
Yes, however, we are beyond the time for our meeting, so we need to take a vote to proceed to the next agenda item.
Okay. It's right now at 9:19. We need to be out of here by 10. We need to be. I need a motion to
Motion to
extend to 10. Director Vella, is there a second? Second, Director Mellinger. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. We're safe until 10.
Thank you.
Good evening, board members. My reports will be short tonight. I did want to give you an update on the Tier 2 plan and minimum purchase quantity negotiations that are going on. The negotiations are actually complete on the mechanics of the Tier 2 plan. However, they are pending resolution of an amendment that needs to be packaged with it that addresses the contractual requirements for minimum purchase quantity. This is something that the technical groups, the negotiators have been working on as part of a collective action. And so we're continuing to meet one-on-one with agencies to review this proposal and to answer their questions. While we're continuing these final negotiations, the legal team is preparing the documents, because it's quite a big package, so we're not losing time while we're continuing negotiations. The plan is to have a single adoption package that would be considered for action by each of the BAWSCA agencies' governing bodies. And so it'd be acted on as a whole, because they are being considered as a whole, given the interaction between the two pieces. However, these negotiations are not going to be complete by December 31st, which is when the current Tier 2 plan expires, as you'll recall. So what this means is we will have an item for your action at your next meeting to extend the existing Tier 2 plan. And we're working with legal counsel to have language in that action that would say your action would be superseded by any unanimous action by the member agencies, right? So, because that will happen, hopefully, over the course of the year. But we're just not there yet. On the FERC Bay Delta update, I did want to note to you that in August, the Department of Water Resources and Bureau of Reclamation and the participating water agencies, the agencies that are participating in the Healthy Rivers and Landscape programs, did actually put out a document that answers and addresses questions that were raised during the previous workshops that the State Board held last April. And I realized that I did not send that link out to you where those answers can be found, so I will send that out to you as part of my notes for tonight's meeting, so that you can look to that. That information is really focused on Phase 2 in particular, so there's not a lot of Tuolumne specific information in it, but it does talk about structure and governance and those types of things. The current Phase 1 timeline is continuing as we've been reporting on. There's really been no changes, so we're anticipating some reports this fall. And then same with the Phase 2 timeline, really no changes in what's going on. Essentially, the staff is deep in working on environmental documents. So it's been very quiet from the outside world, actually, right now. And that concludes my remarks.
Very, very quickly, if I might. Thank you for your presentation. And this may be the only time we have on this agenda to express the hope that the Board Policy Committee can be given an update on what's transpired on a major project that San Francisco had bought into, which was the Las Vaqueras expansion. They originally were going in for 40,000 acre feet. We had supported that. If you do a pro rata of what our district was looking at expending over the time, $100 million for about 5 times that amount that San Francisco was, it would be about a $500 million expenditure, of which BAWSCA would pick up 70% of the cost. That project is now on the ropes. The Contra Costa Board has directed the staff to prepare a report to terminate the efforts on the project. So it's a major dollar amount, and it would be informative, I think, for the Policy Committee and then later this board to be able to address it. Thank you.
Absolutely. I did not intend to address it tonight because it was not on the agenda, but I will definitely address it at the Policy Committee.
Any other questions? Director Weed, you're done, right? Okay. Thank you, CEO Sandkulla. Item 20 is any additional time for public comments. And seeing no public here, or seeing no comments, director's discussion, comments, questions, and agenda requests, besides the VPC, which was just given. Hearing none, date and time, location, future meeting, it's, see attached schedule, be 2 months. If there's no other questions, we'll adjourn the meeting. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
There's